Alright everybody, this is going to be the first section of the Trailfinder 2 video build series, that is. I know it's always one of the last steps to do, but it's one of the first ones I do. I always put these steelies together first because they do take a little bit of time, especially to get them where the holes line up completely, otherwise you get a weird staggered look. So got all four of them done, and as far as the chassis goes, I've gone ahead and I've put all but two of the metal pieces together on it, just the two pieces that are going to hold the transmission. And basically I've gone from step 1 to step 18, I'm on 19 now, where we're going to be dropping the transfer case into the truck, which that one's just a simple, slides in right there, 2 bolts to hold it, and after that you go directly into, like the instructions here say, the last two metal pieces that are left on my little tray over here, which I can go ahead and take those out now, seeing how I don't need a huge hollowed out block of styrofoam laying around, but I'll run you through the parts that are on it now and what I'm going to use as far as what's in the kit. With the skid plate / transfer case mount on, body mounts are on, rock sliders are on, shock hoops up front, all the shackling for the leaf springs are on, the radio box / fuel cell is on, all the body posts that run through the center are on, the aluminum interior tray, or whatever you want to call it, is on. This is where the battery is going to run. Speed controller probably over here, and of course the servo to work the shifter on the 2-speed transmission going in there. That'll be the AS3 servo, and then I'll be using for the steering up here on the front link, I'll be using the Hi-Tech 7955 TG. That way I don't need to run a BEC for a lesser voltage servo, and I won't get any overbuzz or any of that. Now that servo is a coreless design, so it's nice and it's got the heat sinks on it. This is probably, once this thing is finished, it'll be the only time you ever see it like super clean. This one's not going to be as filthy as the other one. Definitely not, because I abused the crap out of that one and broke many parts, and then straight off of the scale path by doing the 4-link rear and the 3-link front with panhard. And this time around I want to keep it bone stock, so this one's probably going to be named like Granny's Wraith or Granny's Trailfinder or something, or Granny's Yoda, who the hell knows. But I'm going to mount the transfer case and then move on to the transmission next, and from there we are going to go into the axles. And next video it should have all the hardware for the axles mounted, and possibly the shocks too. Let's go through a few more pages here to see what's up with that. Yeah, we'll go through that, because then after that you attach the transmission. The main point you just put on these 2 brackets on the corresponding side, so that's no big deal. So next video it'll probably have the it'll be a rolling suspension basically, so see you guys then. Alright guys, I know I promised that the next shot would be of a rolling suspension. Well, I've got the front done, and I managed to find in my parts bin a set of red leafs for the front to give it a little bit more suspension up front, and I will be using, for now, the stock black ones in the rear, but figured I'd show you this because it's a little bit important, and it's something that even though this thing will probably never see all the mud and water and nasty crap, hopefully, just in case it does, I'll be ready for it. What we're looking at here is a completely disassembled K44 axle, which is a standard 10-bolt ultra scale Yoda axle, which you get obviously with the Trailfinder 2. They're a 3-piece design. You have your 2 shells and then your pinion cover back here. And from there, you basically, what I'm going to do here, I've already stripped the grease out of these, cleaned off the ring and the pinion. What we're going to do is we're going to put the shafts back in on one side, or one half of it, I'd say, of the clamshell. We're going to put that back in, slide our bearings out where they're supposed to go, get our axle put back in the center. There we go. Nice and free spinning. And what I'm going to do, don't have any other tools, I'm going to use a screwdriver. I'm going to dip in here to this marine grease and just slather a little bit of it on the axle shafts to keep it from rusting. Just in the odd case that Granny or Grandpa decides that they need to cross a creek to go to the grocery store, their drivetrain is protected. So just a little bit of grease goes a long way on these. You don't want to super cake them, you just want them coated enough that it's good to go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit more grease this time, and I'm going to slather up this ring gear here with it, both sides, to protect the bearings and most importantly keep the ring and pinion from getting all trashed up, rusted, and lead out to start stripping out. So we don't want that to happen because it's a $25 ring and pinion set if you do. So now that's reasonably greased. It doesn't have to be, like I said, you don't have to slam pack it full of grease. I'm going to get a little bit more out here, and I'm simply just going to scoop it down into the slot on the ring side. Actually, rather on the pinion side. The pinion side, I'm just going to spin it around a little bit, and if you guys can see that, it's picked up grease all the way around it. So the next step for this is, since it is a 3-piece axle, I'm going to go ahead and close the clamshell up on it, wipe off the excess grease that's on it. It's got a rather unique way that these axles go together. So I'm going to start by putting my ends back on, and I always do this in a stagger. Get one end bolt over here in, and come around to the opposite side, and then put one in on the opposite corner, opposite side of the axle. Check, make sure there's no binding issues. As you can see, we're spinning very free, and it feels nice and smooth, no grit to it. Don't feel any friction on it, so we can go ahead and put these back in. Sometimes they like to try and eat your bits. So I get the last one here in. Once again, check, make sure that everything's nice and smooth. It is. So now we're going to take our ring that's already in the axle, we're going to take our pinion, line it back up, give it a spin from the pinion, make sure everything feels good, it's nice and smooth once again, no binding on it. And just to keep with the same bit, because there's two different sizes for this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start one of them. And then just staggering every other hole, I'm going to start running them in. You got to check all of your hardware, especially the axles, when you get them. Make sure all these little screws are nice and tight. And to check your gear mesh too, because a lot of people have had problems with the gear mesh on their axle causing it to bind up or destroy the ring and pinion. Like I said, it's a $25 set. So now that I've gone ahead and run staggered, I can just fill in the remaining holes. And work my way back. These are very, very, very small. If I was to say, they're probably M1s. Once again, stop every once in a while and make sure you still have that nice smooth turn. I'll go ahead and get these last two in. A lot of work, but it's just like working on a real car. Alright, all 10 are in. Once again, final check. Everything's nice and smooth. Beautiful. We're going to swap out bits from a 1.5 millimeter over to a 2 millimeter. We've got 4 little screws under the leaf springs that go in and they secure your axle top to bottom. Just a little bit bigger. It's an M2, I believe, or an M3. Yeah, it's an M3. M3 6 millimeter screws that do the case underneath where your leaf springs mount in. Those are tight. Once again, check clearance. Everything's nice and good. We'll go ahead and wipe down this axle to get rid of any residual grease that might have been on it. So now we're left with a nice, clean, very clean rear axle here. And I'm going to keep going on this one. This is probably going to be the longest segment. Now, up on the front, I LocTited every single bolt that was on there because I had issues last time around with the front ones on the knuckles coming loose, and I had to drive a drift pin into it to keep it on there. The axle had gotten stripped out, so I had to go ahead and take care of that issue. But now we're going to be using some M3 6 millimeter button head screws to do our leaf springs. 2 per spring, so you're going to need 4 screws for that. Which every single little thing is nicely labeled what it is. So since I used the red ones up front, I'm just going to use a set of stockers for the rear. Because I want a little bit more bounce up front to compensate for all the weight up there. And I'm LocTiting using just axial thread locker. I'm going to go ahead and mount up my leaf spring here. Now I don't want to put it on all the way yet because I got to let that leaf spring line up with the other hole. So tightening it down about 95% of the way, dropping a bolt, and we're going to go ahead and line this other one up here. Now that's torqued. Torque the other one down. And we're just going to repeat the process here on the other side to get it going. I always find it's a little bit easier to have the leaf spring already, the bolt already through the leaf spring itself. Yet, it's going to prove me wrong. It's a little bit easier when it comes to going into these axles if you've already got the leaf spring. And that'll be my phone ringing. Yes, I changed my ringtone again. This time it's Randy Houser, How Country Feels. Good song. So now, with that done, we've got our rear leaf done, and the last step to doing that is going to be, we're going to take our chassis here. If you guys can see, it's in perfect view this time, actually, for once. I'm going to go ahead and get the shackles and everything set up. We're going to use 4 of these 15mm step screws. Damn it. There we go. 4 step screws, and we're going to use 4 M3 lock nuts. Nylocks, if they want to come out of the bag for me. Okay, so there's the 4th one in. what we're going to do is from the outside in, we're going to come in here and we're going to stick this step screw through. It's going to go through the little hole there on the leaf spring. And for those of you who have already done this a million times, I apologize. Once again, we're going to be changing out bits and going up to a 3/32 and using the standard multi cross wrench. Sometimes it binds going in, so you got to kind of work with it there to get it going in. Once you feel it to start turning the wrench, you know you're pretty good because it's nice and tight. If it's turning the wrench in your hand, you're good to go on that part. Now I'm going to go ahead and, on the rear shackles here, I'm going to tighten.
Everybody happy.
That would be my texting thing. That's, once again, that's Phil Robertson saying everybody happy. Absolutely love Duck Dynasty. So I'm going to get this other bolt here done. And like I said, once it starts spinning in your hands, you know it's tight enough.
Happy.
Everybody happy. I'm pretty happy working on this. We go over here. That humming you hear in the background is my Easy Peak charger charging up that huge 3-cell battery for the 1/8 scale Metal Militia that you guys just watched the unboxing on. So don't mind that little bit of noise back there. It's just the sound of awesomeness charging. I'm going to go ahead and put this last remaining lock nut on and get the step screw to sit through it the right way, because you got to fight them sometimes. I'm just going to do it without tightening the bolt. Like that. And now we've got suspension up and down. And now both of our axles are in. We've got the black leaves in the rear with some compensation for the suspension, and up front we've got the red leaves. So that's pretty much, let's see, it's already 10 to 9 here, so I'm pretty much going to wrap it up because I got to go watch Nashville on ABC. Kind of a no freaking brainer if you live in the South, but or if you love country, but yeah, it's one of my favorite shows. I'm just checking to make sure everything has come through the right way. M3 lock nuts, M3, and now, you know what, I'm going to do one more thing for you guys here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put what they recommend, the number 3 bumper for the front, and that I believe uses 6mm button head screws, which I coincidentally happen to have right here. Got to step the drill bit back down to a this one is actually a gives you both sizes, 2mm. I know I said like 3 something last time on the other one. The bits have been so well used that some of the numbers aren't showing anymore. So we're gonna go ahead and hey, wait. Yeah, that's why you gotta read. Those M6s weren't supposed to be those ones. They're supposed to be countersinks. I seem to have a missing. That's an M8 though. That doesn't matter. That's an M8. That's an extra. I must be burned through those. I'm on the M6s. Yep. Standard, they give you one extra. So, let's see. Now, once I get some, little bit of upgrade for it. Not going to go big on it, maybe just tough armor front bumpers and rear bumper. There we go. Now you're basically looking at what I promised you guys earlier, a rolling suspension. Even though it's not sitting on wheels yet. You're looking basically at suspension. So, that's going to cut it for me for tonight. I'm going to pick it up first thing in the morning, and we hopefully will make a lot more progress. We'll start doing some soldering, getting the motor soldered in, the servos hooked up. Not quite sure. I think I'm probably going to bind a Spectrum receiver to this one, but we're getting there, so we'll see you in the next segment. Alright guys, here we are in the next segment. I've got the drive shafts in. Just hooked up the Novak 55 turn motor. I see I'm probably going to have to pull the pinion back just a hair because it is sitting out a little bit too far for my standards. I want it pushed back just a little bit, but what I'm getting ready to do, as you can see, I'm using some wire extensions because I need to solder the tabs onto my motor. And I've also got to put a Dean's plug on this AE2 ESC. So give me a little bit of soldering going on. If you look there, you can see I've got the body panels all primered. I'm still deciding on what color I'm going to do the body. I first thought like a dark blue with like some white striping or whatever on it, but don't really know which direction I want to go yet, because if you can see over there on the wall, that nearest color is what I was going to go with, and that I think is just a little bit too gaudy for a old school Yoda, but who knows. I still got to hook up the steering servo. Basically, I've got to get everything ready so I can hook up the battery and the ESC so I can set the arms on the shift servo and the steering servo, because I still have yet to hook the steering servo up. So I've got to set those, which all requires the ESC being done. And I'm waiting for my Weller soldering iron to get hot enough so I can actually burn up some of my solder on it, which I've never showed you guys before. I use Miniatronics 6040.03 resin core high grade solder. It's actually pretty cheap for the big ass spool you get of it. Nice and thin. It's got a good melting temperature, and it's better than the stuff I used to use, because I have some of it right here, which is electrical rosin core solder. This is silver bearing, lead free, but it's a .062 or 1.6 millimeter, and it, as you guys can see, this type of solder here is made way more for like doing some heavy grade electrical work versus this little thin solder here. So I mean, this works great too, but you really have to have a hot soldering iron to do this. I think my Weller goes up to about 475, 500 degrees. So it does get nice and hot, but last time I had to do soldering like that with the other, I had to use a blowtorch to heat the wire up enough because my iron would not get hot enough. But I think everything's come together pretty good. You guys saw in the last clip how I had that K44 tore all apart to re-grease everything with marine grease and reassemble it and LocTite everything down. Basically, we're pretty much done here, short of the Dinky's interior kit that I need to get, so it'll hide that big green ass lipo. Totally off topic, as sometimes I normally do. I've had a lot of people tell me how funky the battery and Showtime look being green. So what I did is I just took my case and I wrapped it with electrical tape. So no more big funky green battery in Showtime anymore. But I'm pretty sure my soldering iron's about ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solder the wire leads on for the motor. I still have to cut these and strip them and put a Dean's plug on that. And then we should be ready to rock and get these electronics set up to where I can get them to go to get the servos working. And we're that much closer to being done with it. So I'll just go ahead and cut this segment, and hopefully we'll have a running chassis to drive around in the next clip. Alright guys, we are in our last section of this video here, and pretty much truck's all 100% complete. It's ready to go. I've done a little bit of painting to it. I want to take it out for a shakedown run, but here's what we got so far. Now, at first I was against putting the marshmallowy front bumper and rear bumper on it, but what the hell. I'll be upgrading these to metal anyways, and upgrading the rear bumper to metal, and probably the front bumper too. So it doesn't really matter to me. This paint, I've had so many issues with it, and you can see it's still spider cracked and orange peeled. The first one, it was the can's fault because it had a, for better lack of terms, the can was shitting paint out of the nozzle and was spraying all over the truck, so that was no good. The second time, it was just too damn cold, and even with my
happy.
even with my 75,000 BTU heater going, it still couldn't keep the shop down here warm enough to keep the paint from orange peeling. So we're just gonna go with it that it looks like the truck's been repainted before and rust is starting to come through the surface. One of the things I did differently this time is instead of putting this back piece in or any other back piece, I just took the Lexan and just left it there, so it's a full back window. Now, I'm not going to be putting the screws in the lower body mount strictly for the fact that I need to be able to access my on-off switch and plug in the battery. And I don't want to have to undo 4 screws if something goes wrong ever. Say a lipo started smoking on me, all I have to do is just yank these 2 pins back here and done. Which, by the way, when we look at it, the bed of the truck has been painted with an intense black pearl, I think, to simulate a bed liner. This is, I think, a dark royal blue, and then the striping on it is Chevy. Well, it's an old school Camaro color. It's Arctic white, which on the Heritage Edition Camaros, they used Arctic white with Hugger orange racing stripes, and I can't remember the color. I think it was Heritage red. Don't hold me on that. Heritage red with there's a very specific black too that they used for the stripes on that car, but that's way the hell off topic. Nothing to do with RC. Everything on this one is 100% completely bone stock, and it's going to be going out to get a shakedown run done on it. Basically just a little romp through the woods, and only thing I've done so far is I've swapped out the 155 Steelies and Mud Thrashers for some 1.9 SCX beadlocks with RC4WD Drive Rock Creeper tires, just to give it that little bit of a bite when it needs to. That way it's not gonna run into any traction issues. And if I ever feel like it, I've got a set of very small 2.2s, some Panther Cobras mounted on Venom Creeper wheels. If I ever feel like running a very small 2.2 class tire, that would definitely be it. But there it is, the lopsided Yoda, which has a lot to do with the way the body's sitting in here. I've got to... Oh, that would probably explain a lot right there. Hey, it's not lopsided anymore, Jack. Perfect. That's the only con about not running the body pins, or running the bolts. But what we're going to do is we're going to cheat. We're going to put this front bumper over the stock bumper, and that'll limit the body from moving. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the complete build on this truck. Once again, I'll go over the quick specs on this. I've got a high-tech, what is it? Oh, Jesus. For steering, I've got a high-tech 7955S V2 high-res digital servo. High-tech, high torque, high-tech, high torque, high speed, high voltage. That's a lot of high. The motor is a 55-turn Novak Rockstar. I'm using an axial AS3 metal geared servo for the shifter, and a Venom 5000 hard case 2-cell. That's pretty much it for the guts, other than running the R2 tranny, well, not the R2, but the Trailfinder 2 2-speed transmission, and the killer transfer case. For this one here on drive shafts, I kind of had to split it up. The rear has a junk vac hardened carbon steel shaft, and the front has an axial wild bore. I didn't want to put the marshmallow shafts on and have a failure the first time I ran it, but it might be something that I'm going to have to end up doing. I don't know, I'm going to see how it drives with the wild bore up front. Because this one, I believe, is one of the stockers that came off of the Rubicon, and I believe this one might actually have a little bit of wobble to it. So we'll see how the truck handles first. This one seems to feel lighter than my first one did. The first one was really freaking heavy. But there you go, guys. There's a complete build-up from the unbox straight into a build from the beginning to pretty much done. I'll just probably, after a while, go in here where this little body line is and just put a little bit of white in there just to add some detail to it. And then just run it for a while and then maybe start upgrading it. Maybe just keep it pretty much stock. So hope you guys enjoyed the entire build on this. I had a lot of fun doing it despite the piss off on the paint. Might end up throwing a set of VP Disco wheels on here too, because they are also small and they would look pretty killer on there with the Mud Countries, but don't really like the performance of the Mud Country
Happy.
so far. And gotta love having a very active phone. So once again, hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and look for it out on the trails. Peace, guys.